And welcome. Hi, I'm Andrew Rickson. I'm the convener of this year's Story Conference running from November 23rd to 25, and we're joined with Dr. David Drake. Hi,
Hello,
David.
Andrew.
How's it going?
Good.
You're based in...
Near San Francisco.
Excellent. Looks like a lovely day over there as opposed to here in Melbourne where we had snow just like the other day. But anyway,
Did you really?
yeah. So anyway, David is the director of the Center for Narrative Coaching and Design and founder of the field of narrative coaching. Could you tell about a turning point in your life that saw you getting started in this area?
Well, I've been fascinated by stories all my life. Through my first degrees in university, one was in sociology and one was in theology, and both of them had a lot to do with community stories and cultural stories and sort of ancient mythologies. And so I was always sort of fascinated, but really the turning point for me was in the course of finishing my PhD around 2002. And my father had passed away a couple of years before that, so I was kind of still in a reflective space about what that would mean for my life and as his old son. And as I was finishing up school, I realized that there was a family narrative that was very deep in the roots of my family history around modesty at all costs. And one didn't want to put oneself out too much, which is why my time in Australia was quite familiar. The tall poppy syndrome I felt like I was at home that
Yeah.
way. But I decided when I finished my PhD that I would do a disservice to the gifts I was given in life and the opportunities I was given if I would just sort of settle for just going back to regular consulting on change management. And so I was inspired to do something really audacious, which was to start the field of narrative coaching. And just really sort of putting myself out there and beginning to cobble together the resources for that and the literature and the research. And so that for me was really just taking that path quite seriously and laying the groundwork for it over the next decade.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So could you tell a little bit more about how is narrative coaching similar or different to other forms of coaching?
Well, it's similar, I suppose, in some ways, in that we're trying to really help people develop better self-awareness, better some sense of agency to move through the things in their life that are important to them. But there's some really important distinctions that we offer. One is that we tend not to use goals. We find goals a very limiting structure for many people, and they're not often used well. And so we're much more helping people be attentive to the present moment and what seems really true for them and important for them, as opposed to some linear path towards a future that's just really unpredictable these days. And once people discover what really is the crux of their issue as present in their stories, what they thought they wanted changes rapidly and often significantly. And so we do a lot just to help ourselves be present to people, help them be present to themselves and their own stories, and really work with the intention of those moments as opposed to goals for some kind of a future. The second thing is, as my friend would say, narrative coaching is very Buddhist until it's not. And in the sense that we focus a lot on the present moment, the field of the conversation, just high levels of awareness of what's happening right now. And we do so because we realize that there's most of us are just swimming in a sea of explanations, categories and names and brands, and it's just overwhelming. And so we realize that the research would suggest that explanations tend not to do much in the long run for most people. And it often brackets them or stigmatizes them or it gives them, so we focus more on experiences. So we want to help people create experiences which help them come face to face with the story they're telling right now, face to face with compassion around the consequences that's creating for them, and then to help them have experiences of what it would be like if they were to tell the story a different way. And then we craft experiences of that new narrative so that by the time they would leave a coaching session, they've had a deep felt experience of a new life and a new story right then and there. So we don't do lots of big planning. We don't do goal setting, like I said. We really help them make that transformation in the course of the coaching conversation. And the third thing I'll say is that most coaching is very individually focused and very individually psychologically focused. And we pay great tribute to the cultural narratives that shape their narration, but also the worlds to which they have to return, which is unheard of in most of coaching, but realize those have really strong influences on people. And the second thing is that I think there's too much emphasis on cognition and all the sort of buzz around neuroscience, which is interesting, but not as important as people think it is, I think. And so we realized that most of our core narrative patterns started when we were quite young, before we even had language. So why do we think talking about them is going to get to the root of those issues? So we do a lot of body-based and non-conscious activities now to tap into other aspects of stories that people hold that they would otherwise not realize they even have. And so we have a lot of really fun, very experiential activities now, which can really get to the heart of the matter in a matter of minutes for people. And I love that. And so it's very, very collaborative, very experiential, very mindful, and far different than most people think coaching should be.
That's fantastic. And you also have a new book out.
I do.
Titled Narrative Coaching, Bringing Our New Stories to Life. Could you tell a little bit more about that book?
Well, people write books for a variety of reasons. So one of my first reasons for writing the book was very selfish in a way, that it was really the culmination of 10, 12 years of research and thinking about narrative coaching. And I wanted people, because they always ask, what should I read? And I've written probably 40, 45 articles in journals, but I wanted to create a resource that people could go to one book and have all the core theory, the core resources, the core literature, all in one place. And so it's almost like a very practical graduate level book for people. It doesn't read like a novel. It's very practical, but it also is very solid for people. And so the book is a great place to start to rethink what coaching could be and to understand narrative structure, narrative function, rites of passage and change methodologies, so people can see how they can use people's stories to help bring about transformation and all the academic backing that shows why that would work. So it's been very satisfying for me to finish that and sort of mark the end of that era. And now I'm kind of moving on to the next step of the work, which is to show how to scale this to almost any size you want. I think the biggest number I've used the book for is 55,000.
Wow.
And because it's really a very natural human development process, so scale doesn't really matter. It's the same basic flow. It's the same basic flow we've had with stories since the time began. And we link the 4 phases of narrative structure with the 4 phases of human development and the 4 phases of change, so that people can actually change themselves as they're changing the story in the course of a coaching session. And so the book is just really a really rich resource for people who want to know where this all came from and how they might use it in their life and practice.
Yeah. Well, we're really excited to have you as part of the conference this year, and you're also running a pre-conference workshop for people, which is titled Creating Moments of Meeting, an Experiential Introduction to Narrative Coaching.
Yes.
Tell just a little bit more about what can people expect in your workshop?
Well, I think one of the things, as you get older, you start to realize that all those things you've built up over the years, you actually can now, in true alchemical fashion, bring them back down to their essence. And so this workshop really is helping people get to the essence of what it means to meet somebody in a conversation. And it doesn't even have to be in coaching. It could be, parent to child, boss to team member, between 2 partners. And it's really about, in this frenetic world that we live in which we have all kinds of things we're attracted to, how do we strip all that away to just have a moment of meeting? And I know, Andrew, you're a new parent, and parenting a very young infant is like the perfect example, because there is no language yet, right? It's that moment of meeting when you look them in the eye and they start to recognize you and they smile when they see you. And so I want to bring that to adults. I want to help them. Particularly, I think we live in a world when everything gets escalated so quickly into it's this or it's that, and you're the other, and I'm this, and it's all this clashing, and it's because we don't know anymore how to do what we do for children, which was help them self-regulate, help them be present to themselves, help them name their feelings, help them connect to another human being in a really deep way. And so we put together this piece around Daniel Stern's research with attachment theory in infants, and then showed how you can use that with adults to actually bring two people into a presence together pretty quickly so that you can actually have the conversation you need to be having. And so we want to introduce that so people will be able to learn how to do that, a little bit about the theory, about where it comes from. We'll see that it's a very natural human process. We all know how to do this. There's no fancy methodologies. There's no acronyms. There's no faddish titles. There's none of that stuff.
Yeah.
It's just the art of being deeply human. And so I think for me, that's what narrative coaching is, just bringing this all back to the basics.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, I'm really looking forward to it. It's very exciting to have you part of our conference, David. And thanks so much for taking the time today to chat to us.
You're most welcome. And I look forward to being back in Australia and seeing colleagues and friends there in Melbourne.
That's great. Cheers.
All right. Thanks.